I only opened the old desk drawer because it jammed. But the letter I found inside, yellowed, hidden, quietly waiting, was addressed to me in handwriting I had never seen before. And the moment I read the first line, my whole world shifted. I always thought my desk was nothing special. A simple wooden piece my parents kept for years, passed down to me when I moved out. Whenever I sat at it, writing cards, finishing work, paying bills, I never once wondered what stories it held. But that morning, when the drawer refused to open, something nudged me. Not a voice. Not a feeling of fear. More like a quiet insistence, a gentle tug from the past. I pressed harder, shook the drawer gently, and finally heard something slide behind the frame. A small envelope slipped into view, dusty, creased, and older than anything I had ever seen in that desk. My name was written on the front. Not my nickname. Not my initials. My full name, written in careful, deliberate handwriting. A date sat in the corner, 32 years before I was even born. My heart thudded softly, not in fear, but in a way that felt like standing at the edge of something important. A truth I had never been told. A story no one had ever mentioned. A secret that had waited patiently for me to grow old enough to open it. I turned the envelope over, and my breath caught. The seal was unbroken. This letter wasn't lost. It was hidden. And now, I had to decide whether to open it. But even before I tore the seal, I sensed something. Whatever was inside wasn't meant to hurt me. It was meant to find me. I held the envelope for a long moment before opening it. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. There was something intimate about touching paper that had been sealed before my parents were even born. Something sacred, like I was intruding into a conversation meant for another lifetime. The paper inside was thin and fragile, soft around the edges. When I unfolded it, the faint scent of old cedar drifted up. The kind my grandmother's wardrobe used to carry. The handwriting inside was elegant, slanted, almost old-fashioned. It didn't match my parents' or my grandparents'. I knew their writing well. This belonged to someone I had never met. Someone who had taken their time. The first line stopped me cold. If you're reading this, then the truth has found its way to you at last. I reread the sentence, my mind racing. Found its way to me? Who even knew I would end up with this desk? Or that I would be the one to find the hidden letter? My hand steadied as I read on. This family has a story that was never spoken aloud. But blood remembers. And someday, someone would have to face it. My throat tightened. The writer wasn't dramatic. They were gentle. Careful. Almost protective. The next line made me sit back in my chair. You are not the first to carry our name. And you will not be the last to carry its burden. A burden? From who? And why was it hidden, locked in a desk drawer for decades? My mind jumped between generations, my parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, searching for the missing piece. Nobody ever talked about secrets. No strange stories. No whispered warnings. My family was ordinary. Predictable. Or so I thought. As I folded the letter half shut, a soft panic rippled through my chest, not because of what I'd read, but because of what I hadn't. This was just the beginning. Whoever wrote it hadn't even signed their name yet. And suddenly, the room felt smaller. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for me to read the rest. I couldn't focus on anything else that day. Every task, every email, every cup of coffee felt secondary to the letter in my hands. I kept turning it over, reading the lines again and again, searching for clues I might have missed. Who wrote this? And why now? Why did it reach me after all these years? The more I thought about it, the more I realized the handwriting looked familiar. Not like my parents, but like someone in my family tree, someone I'd only seen in old photographs. I ran to the shelf where our family albums were kept. The dust tickled my fingers as I pulled out boxes of black and white memories. Faces stared back at me, grandparents with stern expressions, uncles smiling awkwardly, aunts I'd never met. And then I saw him. A man with kind eyes, sharp cheekbones, and hands folded neatly in his lap. A photograph labeled, James Alden, 1934 to 1985. Could it be him? The handwriting bore a striking resemblance to his signature at the bottom of another old document. I flipped back to the letter. It made sense. The timing, the hidden desk, the gentle tone, it all fit. But what secret had James Alden carried so carefully? I could feel it pressing down through the decades, waiting for someone to finally take notice. I decided I couldn't wait for answers to fall into my lap. I needed to ask questions. I needed to understand the story that had been hidden from everyone. Yet, a quiet voice inside me warned, be careful. Some truths are heavier than you think. Even as I promised myself I would learn the whole story, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and dread. It wasn't just curiosity driving me, it was responsibility. This letter, tucked away for so long, had chosen me. And now, I had to follow it. The next morning, I returned to the letter with a notebook in hand. Every line, every pause, every carefully chosen word felt like a breadcrumb leading me somewhere I wasn't yet ready to go, but had to follow. A phrase caught my eye. Our family carries a shadow, one that has shaped us quietly for generations. A shadow? I thought of all the quiet mornings, the hushed conversations, the topics that were never spoken aloud. Had I sensed this shadow without knowing it? Or had it always been hidden, waiting for someone to uncover it? I read further. It began long before you were born, and it has touched each life in ways you cannot imagine. If you choose to learn, you must look deeper than you've ever looked before. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just a story about a forgotten desk or a long-dead relative. This was a story about me. About my family. About something that had been deliberately concealed. I flipped through old photos and birth records. I scribbled notes, connections, dates, and names. Each piece seemed ordinary, until I compared it with the letter. Patterns emerged. A name kept repeating across generations, always in places I hadn't noticed before. A small anomaly in a birth certificate. A single sentence in a will that didn't quite match the rest. And then I remembered a story my mother once told me in fragments, never complete. Some things are best left buried. I realized the letter was meant to do the opposite. It was meant to uncover what was buried. And I was the one it had chosen to piece it together. A chill ran down my spine. I wasn't just reading a story, I was being handed a responsibility. A secret that had slept quietly for decades was now my burden. And I knew, the next step would take me closer than I had ever imagined to the heart of the truth. That evening, I gathered everything I had, the letter, old photographs, birth records, and a notebook full of my scattered thoughts. I spread them across the desk, tracing lines and dates like a detective trying to solve a puzzle. The letter had hinted at a shadow running through the family. I had no idea what that meant, but one thing became clear, it was connected to a name that appeared again and again, James Alden. Not just my grandfather, but other relatives I had only known in passing. Then, tucked in the corner of a photo album, I found something strange, a folded piece of paper, yellowed like the letter. It wasn't there before, or maybe I had never noticed it. The handwriting was the same as the letter. It read, "Trust only those who seek truth, and beware the ones who hide it." A shiver ran down my spine. Who was hiding it? And what truth needed to be uncovered? I went through the family records again, this time more carefully. Birth certificates, marriage documents, even old letters from distant relatives, small inconsistencies jumped out at me. One name didn't match what I had always been told. A date didn't add up. Even a photograph of a smiling couple seemed slightly wrong. Everything pointed to a secret so carefully buried that generations had acted as if it never existed. And now, the letter had found me, the one person who could finally bring it to light. I felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. The pieces were starting to fit, but I still didn't know the full picture. Who in my family had hidden this secret? And why had they trusted me to find it? As night fell, I kept the letter on my desk, staring at the familiar handwriting. It was both a warning and a guide. And deep down, I knew the next step would reveal the part of my family I had never been allowed to see. The next morning, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I needed answers. I called my mother under the guise of casual conversation, asking about family stories, distant relatives, anything that seemed unusual. At first, she laughed, brushing off my questions. "Nothing exciting ever happened in this family," she said. But I pressed gently, mentioning the letter and the strange patterns I had noticed. Her laughter faltered. Her eyes, usually bright, clouded with something heavy. Then, in a low voice, she said, "There's something you were never told, something your grandfather wanted to keep hidden." My heart skipped. Finally, I had confirmation, this wasn't just speculation. The shadow existed. And it wasn't just a metaphor. She hesitated, then continued. "It began with your grandfather. Before you were born, there was an incident, a choice he made that affected everyone after him. He tried to protect the family by keeping it a secret. He wrote letters, left clues, hoping someone would understand when the time was right." I listened, barely breathing. The letter I found wasn't just a story. It was a map, guiding me to understand what my grandfather had tried to shield us from. "Your grandfather believed that one day, someone brave enough would find the truth and carry it forward," she added. "Maybe it's you." I looked at the desk, at the envelope lying there, fragile and yellowed. The weight of responsibility pressed on me. I wasn't just uncovering history, I was stepping into it. I had to see the full picture. I had to know what my grandfather had kept hidden, and why it had waited decades for me. As I ended the call, a strange clarity settled over me. The secret wasn't just about shame or regret. It was about truth, legacy, and understanding the choices that shaped generations. I knew the next step was crucial. The real story, the heart of the secret, was about to be revealed. I spent the next day tracing family history, flipping through dusty albums, old letters, and documents I had never noticed before. Then I found it, a small folded note tucked between the pages of a ledger dated 1958. It wasn't a letter like the one I had found, it was more like a confession. The handwriting was unmistakable, my grandfather's. And the words were simple, yet heavy. "I've made a choice that will protect some, but others will suffer in silence. This burden is mine alone, until someone finds it." My hands trembled. What choice? What burden? I cross-referenced dates, comparing them with birth records and photographs. One piece fell into place, a child had been quietly given up for adoption, a fact no one ever talked about. That child had a place in the family, hidden, erased from public memory, but alive. And suddenly, everything clicked. The shadow my grandfather mentioned wasn't a metaphor. It was a real, living secret, a life that had been shaped by his decision. I realized the letter I had found wasn't just a story for me to read. It was a call to action. A way to acknowledge the past, face it, and maybe, finally, mend it. My mind raced with questions. Who was that child? Where were they now? And why did my grandfather believe I was the one who could handle this truth? I felt a mixture of sorrow, guilt, and determination. Generations had carried this secret quietly, and now it rested on my shoulders. But I also felt something else, hope. The letter wasn't just a warning. It was a bridge, a way to bring the hidden truth back into the light. As I held the fragile paper in my hands, I realized the journey was only beginning. And the next step would bring me closer than ever to the person who had been kept from my family for decades. The next morning, I began the search in earnest. I pulled out old adoption records, distant relatives' letters, and every scrap of paper that might hold a clue. The weight of responsibility pressed on me, but I felt a strange sense of purpose. This was what my grandfather had prepared me for, this was the path he had hoped I would take. Every lead seemed small, almost insignificant. A name here, a date there, a forgotten photograph tucked into a drawer. But I followed them, connecting dots across decades, across states, across lives. Then I found it, a record that had been almost invisible among mountains of paperwork. A birth certificate with the same last name as my family, but listed under a different guardian. The child had grown up, moved away, and built a life far from the family I knew. I couldn't believe it. All this time, they had existed, this person, this hidden thread of our family story, completely unknown to me. And now, decades later, the letter had guided me straight to them. I took a deep breath, thinking of what it would be like to finally meet this lost member of my family. Would they even want to meet me? Would they carry anger, confusion, or resentment? And yet, something told me they had been waiting, too, waiting for a chance to understand, to reconnect, to fill the gaps that years of secrecy had left behind. The letter had done more than reveal a secret. It had opened a door to healing, understanding, and perhaps, a family reunited. I knew the next step would be the hardest. I had to reach out, carefully, respectfully, and prepare for whatever response came back. For the first time since finding the letter, I felt the tremor of hope beneath the fear. The secret was no longer just a shadow. It was a story waiting to be completed. Days passed as I wrestled with how to reach out. I had the name, a last known address, and an email address buried in old records, but I hesitated. What could I say? How could I explain decades of secrecy without causing pain? Finally, I drafted a message. I wrote slowly, carefully, every word weighed against the possibility of causing hurt. I didn't mention family judgment, blame, or hidden mistakes. I only spoke of discovery, connection, and the hope of understanding a shared past. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours before sending it. And then, nothing. The silence that followed was heavy, like the world had stopped, waiting for a response. 2 days later, an email arrived. The subject line was simple, "I think we need to talk." My heart raced. I opened the email with trembling hands. The words were cautious but kind, tinged with disbelief and curiosity. "I never knew about you, or that I had family waiting to be found. I don't know what to say, but I want to understand." Tears blurred my vision. This was real. After decades of secrets, the first bridge had been built. I replied immediately, expressing the love and care my grandfather had intended through his letter. I shared the small truths I knew, the dates, the documents, and the story that had been hidden for so long. Every word felt sacred. Every line a connection across time. And as I hit send, I realized the weight of the secret had shifted. It was no longer a shadow that hung over the family. It was becoming light, hope, healing, and understanding beginning to flow where silence had ruled. The next step would be meeting them in person, and I knew it would be a moment that changed both our lives forever. The day finally came. I drove nervously to the small town where they lived, carrying the letter and a small family photo as a gesture of connection. My hands trembled, my heart raced, and every mile brought a flood of memories, questions, and hope. When I arrived, I saw them waiting, standing in the doorway, hesitant but curious. For a moment, we simply looked at each other, two strangers yet connected by decades of family history. We sat down in the living room. The air was thick with unspoken words, the weight of years, and the delicate tension of a story long hidden. I handed them the letter. Their hands shook slightly as they took it, eyes widening as they read the careful handwriting, the words my grandfather had written decades ago. Tears welled up, and I felt my own eyes sting. "This was meant for you to find," I said softly. It was never about blame. It was about truth, and about understanding who we are as a family. Slowly, they began to share their story, the life they had lived apart from us, the questions they had carried, and the quiet longing for connection they had never acted upon. Each word filled the gaps left by years of secrecy. Each tear bridged a distance that had felt insurmountable. By the time the conversation ended, something had shifted. The family secret, once heavy and isolating, had transformed into a story of resilience, love, and discovery. A connection had been restored that my grandfather had hoped for, though he never lived to see it. We hugged, tentative at first, then with the warmth of shared understanding. The letter had done more than reveal a secret. It had reunited hearts, bridged generations, and healed a family wound that had quietly endured for decades. After that first meeting, our family began to shift in ways I had never imagined. The once hidden connection became a source of strength, teaching us that honesty and courage could heal wounds decades old. We shared stories, laughter, and tears over meals, discovering how much we had in common despite the years apart. Old photographs took on new meaning, and family gatherings were richer, fuller, infused with the presence of someone who had been missing for so long. The letter remained on my desk, a silent witness to the change it had sparked. Every time I looked at it, I remembered my grandfather's careful words, his hope that someone would find the truth and carry it with care. We also realized how fragile secrets can be, how they shape lives quietly, and how powerful it is when they are finally revealed. What had once been a burden became a bridge, connecting generations in a way no one could have imagined. And while the past could not be rewritten, we could embrace it, honor it, and learn from it. The family secret that had seemed impossible to confront had instead given us understanding, empathy, and a sense of unity. I often think about that moment when I first opened the letter. If I had ignored it, if I had left it buried, we would have never known each other, never healed, never understood the choices that shaped our family. It's strange how one small act, opening a letter tucked away in a desk, can ripple through decades, changing lives in ways you could never predict. In the weeks that followed, I often returned to my desk and looked at the letter. It had started as a fragile piece of paper, a hidden message from a grandfather I never knew well, and had transformed into something far greater, a guide, a teacher, a bridge across time. I realized the letter taught me more than the secret itself. It taught me courage, the courage to face what is hidden, the courage to ask difficult questions, the courage to reconnect when it would be easier to turn away. It taught me patience, how one small act can ripple slowly, waiting decades to find the right person, the right moment, the right heart. It taught me love, not the easy kind, but the enduring kind, the kind that waits quietly, preserves hope, and trusts that someone will one day understand. Most of all, it reminded me that family is more than the sum of what we see. It's the stories we inherit, the choices we honor, the mistakes we forgive, and the connections we restore. I carefully filed the letter in a protective envelope, but I knew I would never forget its lessons. And every time I sat at my desk, I felt the weight of the past balanced with the light of understanding, knowing that the secret once hidden had brought life, not pain. The story of that letter will stay with me forever, a quiet reminder that even the smallest discovery can change everything. That even hidden truths, when revealed with care, can heal, connect, and transform lives across generations. As I carefully place the letter back into its envelope one last time, a quiet stillness fills the room. What began as a hidden note in an old desk has transformed into a journey across generations, a journey that revealed love, courage, and the power of truth. The family secret, once heavy and unspoken, is now a source of connection and understanding. We've learned that the past doesn't have to define us, it can guide us, teach us, and even heal us when approached with care. I think about my grandfather, who hid this letter decades ago, trusting that one day, someone would find it. He didn't know me personally, but he trusted me. And through that trust, he gave our family a gift far greater than words, the chance to reconcile, to connect, and to honor the lives we share. If there's one lesson I take from this journey, it's this. Even the smallest discovery, a letter, a photograph, a whispered memory, can open doors we never imagined. Sometimes, the courage to open them is all it takes to change everything. And now, as I sit here reflecting on the story, I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening, for sharing in this journey of hidden truths and quiet revelations. Stories like these remind us that every family has its secrets, and every secret, when shared with care, can bring healing and connection. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share. More emotional stories like this await you here at Aunt's Secret Corner, where every secret finds its way home. Remember, no matter how hidden, love and understanding always find a way.